And now on Radio Lou, we join John Carter once again for the second of his interviews with Martin Barre.
I'd just like to take you back now to where you first started, where your musical experience first started. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? What happened?
Right, a long story, that one, John. There's a guy called Mick Warburton, and he's writing a book about all the early bands that you and I were in, and then the bands I was in afterwards. And he probably does it with a lot of different bands, but he's just looking at all those bands in the 50s and the 60s, because it's an important time in the history of music. You and I go back to, I guess, 60. What year did we start?
About 63, wasn't it? 64 or something like that.
I think so, yeah. So back in Birmingham, that music was a huge thing in people's lives. You know, that TV was pretty basic, that there wasn't much else. So kids used to make their own entertainment, and music was a really vital way of kids to entertain themselves. So there were so many bands and so many gigs. So even the most simple, basic, naive band could go out and do gigs and make a bit of money and have some fun and hopefully improve. So you and I were in this band called The Dwellers.
Yeah, that's right. That's where we started, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I was sort of doing Buddy Holly, Beatles, Little Richard, that sort of stuff. Same as everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
We wrote one song and recorded it for a competition, which we didn't win. But you and I have still got that recording.
Can't get you out of my mind, the very memory of your caress. Lonely nights have made me blue without you. Sweet memories fill in my mind, all the hoping that you'll be mine. Then you left me in a crying pain without you. You'll never know how much I love you so. You know that I'd be blue without you. Now everybody can see me.
And of course the Moonrakers, which the Dwellers morphed into the Moonrakers, and of course that was quite a big band. There were a 7-piece band, weren't we? Which is slightly unusual in those days, wasn't it? The fact that we had so many different instruments in the same band, I thought was quite interesting. We did do one or two decent gigs, didn't we? In those days.
Well, we sort of had some sort of management, sort of a step up from what we had before. And I remember playing down in Bournemouth, and we played with David Bowie, who was then Davy Jones in the Lower Third. We played with him. We played at the Beulah Club with Dave Anthony's Moods, and then then you went to join a band on the South Coast, didn't you? Yeah, it was a very bad decision for guitar players because nobody wanted guitar players. They were all playing soul music, so I had to play saxophone to work and to get a gig.
It was amazing because you've learnt the saxophone and the flute, for that matter, didn't you, in a very short time scale, which was...
If you heard it, you wouldn't say that. You would say, that's really awful. Put that instrument down right away.
Yeah, but Martin, saxophones aren't easy instruments to play, are they?
But they sound awful when they're played badly. And how do I know that? But I played flute. I played flute at school, so I sort of had a bit of a leg up. But you and I played in the same band, I think, for 3 years.
Yeah, it was about 3 years, yeah.
And then this band stayed together for 3 years as well. So pretty well the same people, different singers. And we went to Italy, we went to Germany. We were a backing band for Alvin Robertson, the Coasters, Lee Dorsey. We did an amazing amount of stuff and had fantastic times. We never had any money.
So that's when you really learned your trade, though, wasn't it, to be honest?
Well, maybe. I don't think anybody took the music that seriously then. People I know said I was always in my room playing my guitar, but I don't remember that. But I don't think music was the reason people did it. People did it because it was fun. It was an adventure.
But you had to learn a living, didn't you? It must have been a pretty precarious time at that particular time for you to, sort of keep going, really. I mean,
yeah, I used to sleep on the floor. But I didn't care. I mean, nobody cared. Lived off baked beans. It didn't matter. I just loved the fact I could do it.
Yeah.
And then the blues came to England, and when the blues boom started, with John Mayall, with Eric Clapton, Hendrix came over from America. They had the blues train on TV with Buddy Guy, B.B. King, Freddie King, and people loved the blues. So this kick-started music to me, in my mind, particularly for guitar
So
players.
you came into vogue as a guitar player.
Yeah, well, I chucked
along
my
with
sax
that,
away.
Yeah, you chucked.
Yeah, and we morphed into a blues band, and I started taking the music more seriously because I was playing an instrument that I loved.
Yeah.
Whereas the saxophone, I didn't care at all, really. But the blues brought out what I really wanted without knowing it. And then I met Toll.
Yeah, so tell me about what happened when...
We were about to quit because, work was running out, people were getting fed up. So we were going to finish the band. It's called Gethsemane. But we played at the Van Dyke Club in Plymouth. And I'd met Jethro Tull, the band, so, because there's flute playing involved.
Because you
had a lot in common.
You played for them, I think,
yeah.
You at one stage.
Yeah.
And that's where Ian must have heard you.
Yeah, well, they remembered me. And literally, our last gig was Gethsemane up in London. I was given this business card from Terry Ellis, I didn't know who he was at the time, saying, call me tomorrow, it's important. And it had a little Chrysalis logo on, which was the record label. And, of course, it was to audition for the band. And after about a month, I properly joined the group. And Penzance was, I think, our first gig. We played the Toby Jug, we played Mothers in Erdington, you remember that one? And it wasn't very good, people still wanted the blues band, but Jethro Tull weren't a blues band anymore. We were sort of writing our own music, and we were something else, and people weren't sure about it.
Yeah, you must have had to work very hard to get into the Ian Anderson's sort of musical sort of...
Yeah, well we were all worried. He was as worried as anybody else because he was sticking his neck out and writing music that wasn't mainstream. And at that time, everybody was a 12-bar blues band, and that's how people worked. So it was a dangerous thing to do, but slowly people started to appreciate the songs and how different it was, and then the rest, as people might say, is history.
Did you remember it as happening all at once, or were the crowd
No.
slowly getting bigger and bigger, and
Yeah,
you felt
well,
a bit more?
Well, the first 2 weeks, nobody spoke to me.
Really?
Because I don't think they were sure whether they wanted me in the band or not. So they were sort of quite distant, I think in the back of their minds that they were going to say, well, it's not working out, we'll have to go back to being a 12-bar blues band and find a proper blues guitar player.
In a musical sense, you must have clicked a little bit, to be
well,
honest.
I just think because I didn't have any pre-concept of style. I played the blues not particularly well, but I did a bit of jazzy things and folky things, and it was a mishmash of styles, which I sort of made my own. So, I wasn't learning all of the licks that all the other guitar players were paraphrasing rather badly. I didn't ever do that. I never wanted to.
Yeah, because even the first CD you did with the band, that really illustrated the tremendous variety of styles you introduced into that.
Yeah.
And it must have been a combination of you and Ian sort of working at something a bit different, really.
Well, I think in the early days it was mainly Ian. Obviously everybody worked out their own parts, be it bass, drum parts, guitar parts, but the songs were pretty well, other than once. I wrote one song that was a B-side to Living in the Past, but it was developing in the early days, and it wasn't until probably 2-3 years down the line that all the people in the band started contributing a lot more in the writing and the arranging and the production.
So Ian let loose the reins a little bit, did he?
I don't think he let loose the reins. I just think that was... It was more of a band, bands were that traditional 4 people working together or 5 people working together, And you're either a solo artist, like a David Bowie or Elton John a bit later on, but, you know, a solo artist with a band, or you're a band. And we, like 10 years after, Led Zeppelin, Family, Spooky Tooth, Pink Floyd, it was a band. So that there was a division of duty amongst all the members of the band.
But when did that, which CD did you feel was sort of illustrated that band combination, if you like?
Well, probably Thick as a Brick, because we literally sat in a room and worked the music out over about 2 months. So it was very much worked out, and a lot of thought went into it.
Right.
Yeah, but, you know, things change, you know, that didn't always stay that way. And like a lot of bands, it's quite surprising where the inspiration or the music writing or the songwriting comes from. You look at a band like Queen, and it's not obvious who wrote the songs. And of course, you don't read about it particularly. You read about Freddie Mercury because of his character, and the others are sort of in the background. But the reality is, when they're all in a room making a record, it's a different balance. People just did their job, you know, and if you did your job well, you enjoyed it more. And there was no concept of doing less than everything. There was no sort of holding back, but like people saying, well, hang on, I'm not going to be involved in this because I'm not being paid to do it. It was the opposite of that everybody wanted to be a part of it, and you know, we're all sort of hungry to use our ideas. And
I guess in practice, Ian accepted the contributions because they appeared on the CDs. Yeah, so that's really what I'm getting at, I suppose.
I think, I mean, there was no issues at all. There was no scenario where people weren't encouraged to do more with the music, and that's why we survived, because there was a lot of input from different people. Dave Pegg put a lot of folk music into Tull. David Palmer put a lot of classical music in. Peter Vitesse, a lot of jazz. Everybody had something to put in the pot. And the lineup changing had an upside and a downside. The downside is it lost its identity as a band. The upside was that when musicians joined the band, they brought something different with them, and it kept Jethro Tull going musically throughout the 43 years.
And of course, you being there for 40 years, at least you kept that identity, because it's your sound, isn't it? And Jethro Tull's sound is pretty reliant, really, on your contribution.
I never think about it, but, you know, it's not that important to me. And I tell people that I own the music of Jethro Tull, but the music doesn't own me. So I don't want to be tied to it 100%, where that's all I do and that's all I'm known for, because I want to do a lot more than that. I've always have wanted to. So I respect it, and I know I'm a part of it, but I don't dwell on it. You know, I sort of move on. I want to write my own music. I like being very independent of other people. You know, I'm better on my own.
Yeah. We'll come to your later work a bit later, but it's been lovely talking to you, and I do hope that you might come along and have another chat in the weeks to come.
And as you cross the circle line, well, the asphalt creaks behind. You're a rabbit on the run, and the silver splendors fly in the corner of your eye, shining in the setting sun. Well, do you ever get the feeling that the stories do them real and in the present tense? All that everybody's on the stage, and it seems like you're the only person sitting in the audience. Skating away, skating away, skating away on the thin ice of the new day.